Welcome to TNT Outdoors. I'm your host, Scott. Today we're going to be testing the DIY night vision scope attachments that you can find on Amazon. One that I picked up off Amazon for just over $100. I'm going to mess up the name here, but it's the Megaorei 2. The Megaorei 2. I don't know how to pronounce the name, but there it is. Anyway, so I got this DIY night vision scope attachment, as they call it. Try to obviously have some night vision for hunting and scouting and whatnot through the rifle scope. So it's not really an unboxing video, but let's just kind of see what we got in the box here. So it comes with this camera in there, and this is actually the sleeve that fits over your scope, screws on. Also comes with the IR illuminator, just infrared flashlight basically. Let's see, and of course LCD panel, battery pack in there. And there's a few assortments of different attachments to attach the things on. And it came with a hood for the LCD panel here. And a charging pack for the batteries. And they actually use these kind of batteries here. One obviously in the IR flashlight, and the battery pack for the LCD, which also powers the camera, takes 2 of those. And so it came with a charger pack, so I could charge all 3 at the same time. Pretty nice. Now I tested this DIY night vision setup over quite a few weeks, different weekends. Different nights. I recorded approximately 150 different video captures with the unit itself. So I really tried to put it through its paces. I would really recommend watching this video all the way through to the end. I'm going to give you kind of my experience as we go through, and that way you can kind of go through the same progression I did and form your own opinion, of the product itself, if you think it's something that would be valuable to you or not. I tested this DIY night vision scope attachment on 2 different rifles with 2 different scopes. Let's have a look at each one. Alright, the first rifle I tested this DIY night vision scope was on a Diamondback DB15 chambered in 223-556. And it is attached to an Ozark Armament 4x32 rifle scope. The Ozark Armament, the scope here, also very inexpensive. I think I picked it up off Amazon as well for like $60. So it's not a very high dollar scope, really inexpensive. But I've actually been really happy with the scope, before putting this on. It seems to do pretty well, So you can see we've got the camera attached here. And this is the LCD screen where you view what's going on through the scope. And on this one, I just put the infrared flashlight right on the side of one of the rails there. That's how the setup looks on this one. Let's look at our other rifle. H&R, a single shot 243, the youth model. Harrington Richardson 243 caliber break barrel single shot. And the scope on there is just a not a real expensive scope. It's actually the scope that came with the rifle when I bought it from Academy years ago. It's just a BSA 3-9x40 scope, so it is a little bit bigger objective than the scope on the Diamondback. So it should, in theory, allow a little more light, including the IR light, to come in. I do need to say that if you had a more high dollar scope, with a bigger objective, you might get a little bit better results from this device than one of these. I think it'd be a slight, if anything, difference, but it might be a little bit different, so that's worth mentioning. So here we go. Again, we've got the camera and the housing that attaches right on the eyepiece of the scope here. I will say this scope doesn't have a focus on it, but the other scope does have a focus on the eyepiece, and it's pretty much impossible to get to once this is on there. So it's got that on, got our LCD, and it's actually mounted to the scope itself with one of the little attachments that was included with the DIY night vision scope. And we've got our infrared flashlight, or IR illuminator, attached right here, also onto the scope via the special little attachment that came with it. So That's the setup on the 243. There you go. One of the reasons I chose these two particular rifles and scope combinations to do the testing is plain and simply because that's what would fit the camera attachment, and that's something to consider. This actually would not work with my 30-30. The hammer was getting in the way of the scope attachment itself. It would not cock, and then if you had cocked it and fired, it would not fire. It would bang up against it. And this also would not work with my Remington 7mm Magnum bolt action. The bolt would not easily open and close with this attached onto the scope, that particular setup. I could get the bolt open, it was very, you kind of had to wiggle this just a little bit open. It was just not doable. So pretty much out of necessity, that's why we chose these two, because they would work with the particular scope setups for each rifle. All right, well, let's see some footage. Let's see what it looks like. All right, I began testing the DIY night vision scope attachment last year on December 18th. It was the first night of testing, and did probably about 10 or so video captures that evening just for the initial testing. The magazine used in conjunction with the Diamondback DB15 rifle is a 10-round magazine. There were no magazines of any higher capacity than 10 rounds used with or in conjunction for this video. And you can see from this first footage here of me trying to get the camera lined up with a scope, it's a little tricky and can be a little frustrating, not only to align it correctly, but to keep it in place. It likes to wiggle. So that was a bit of a headache and something that constantly having to monitor. And in this shot, you can see a feeder, and that feeder is currently 80 yards away. And you can see there's a larger tree kind of in the middle there, and that tree is right at 120 yards. And so far, the footage looks pretty good. Okay, so my initial reaction on that first night was it was pretty good. You could see the 80 yards to the feeder really well. You could even see, pretty good out to almost at 120 yards. So I was pretty happy with it that first night, and anxious to do more, hopefully see some game with it. I continued to try to test the DIY night vision scope attachment, over several weekends, over several weeks. Was constantly battling the fog. Fog is not your friend with IR. You try to see with that, basically it just looks like you're looking at a thick white blanket. So here we are on December 28th. On this evening I recorded probably close to 50 video captures in an attempt to get some decent footage to review and look at. And in this video, that feeder is exactly 100 yards away. And you can see it pretty good here. And in this next video here, you can see there's a hog to the left and behind the feeder, and it's probably at about 120 yards away. And in between the feeder and us is a pond, and here we got a beaver swimming. He's probably about 50 yards. And here's a small hog. He's about 60 yards away. And he slowly walks towards me and comes to about 25 yards. And here's a continuation of the previous hog, just another video. And this hog makes it around the pond and to the feeder that's 100 yards away. And you can see him there. And you can see hog under the feeder, again, 100 yards away. And here we actually have some footage of a beaver. He's across the pond from us on the other bank, and he's actually eating some corn and a Hog Heaven powder mixture that I had put out about 65, maybe 70 yards from where we are. And you can see the center of the focus is really soft, and I could not get it to get really sharp. That's not the scope on the rifle. That's actually the camera of the night vision device itself. Just for some reason right in the center, and no matter how much I moved the camera back and forth, tried to focus it, I just could not get a good focus out of it. And here we've got two beavers eating. I took the DIY night vision scope attachment to the section of the property that's got kind of a wide open lane where I've got several landmarks ranged out to about 240 yards from where we are currently sitting to test the distance that we can see with the night vision. Obviously, I made sure all the batteries were freshly charged and ready to go for this session. I spent a lot of time adjusting the IR to try to get it in the most optimal spot. These trees are 65 yards away. In this footage, there is a T-post in the center of the screen. It is exactly 120 yards away. There's a large tree towards the center of that lane that's behind the T-post, and you can barely see it, and that tree is 145 yards away. Again, I have additional landmarks ranged all the way out to the tree line. It was approximately 240 yards, but you can't see any of them with this DIY night vision, so you can't see them. So, for my final thoughts on the Amazon DIY night vision scope attachment, it does provide some night vision. It attaches to the scope. You can see in the dark up to, I'd say, 100 yards. I feel comfortable telling people that it is adequate out to 100 yards. Beyond that, it can be iffy. Could it go a little further, maybe be a little clearer with a better quality, bigger objective lens scope? It's possible. However, I can't 100% recommend this product. There were some issues that came up. Camera attachment to the eyepiece of the scope is pretty frustrating, especially in the beginning, to kind of figure out where it needs to be placed, and then it's constantly trying to wiggle and move on you, and you're always having to adjust it. So that's frustrating, but it's something you can live with. And then also actually trying to shoot while looking at an LCD screen, up on top of the scope or whatnot. It's definitely awkward. You're used to being down, looking through the scope with your eye, and instead you're holding it and you're doing like this, and it's just very awkward. It's uncomfortable, and it's just not natural, and so it kind of makes the shooting more difficult. Again, nothing necessarily deal breaker. It's just not great. I mean, it is what it is. So again, not a bad review. Not a glowing review, not necessarily even a recommendation. You can see the footage I was able to capture and see if that's sufficient for what you're looking for the price they're charging for these things on Amazon. I think I got kind of got what I paid for. It was a learning experience for me. I got some footage, and I'm going to continue to test the product and see if we can get some kind of use out of it for our channel here, and maybe come across some interesting things for you guys to look at. So, all in all, it's okay. So, I'm not ecstatic, but I'm not thoroughly upset. There you go. Kind of a mixed review for the Amazon DIY night vision scope attachment. I hope you found this video informative and helpful and maybe entertaining too. And if you did and you like this content, please consider subscribing. We got plenty more product reviews and testing. We got product competition, head-to-head matchup videos. We got some other stuff that's going to be just more for fun. Still about wildlife and the outdoors, but just trying to put more of a funny spin on it. Maybe make you smile or even laugh, So we're really hoping to get some of that out, and hopefully you'll be here to see it. So please consider subscribing, and if you haven't already, please also consider hitting the like button if you liked the video. So if you did, please hit the like. It really means a lot. Really makes you feel good. If people are telling you they like it, it makes you feel like you did a good job. So if you would, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, well, that's okay. But if you did like it, please hit the like button. And if you liked it and you're not already, you should consider subscribing, because, hopefully we'll do more stuff you like. So, well, that does it for me for today. So, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.